Howdy folks, Jambareeqi here. Today, I'm going to be ranking every villain from the classic era of The Simpsons, which is made up of seasons 1 to 8. However, I'll not be including Treehouse of Horror villains, because they're non-canon, Hank Scorpio, due to how he's not an antagonist to The Simpsons themselves, or Artie Ziff, as we only get to see his origin story in the Golden Age. With all of this in mind, let's get ranking. Mr. Black, the director of Camp Krusty, is a proudly evil businessman who rules his clown-branded summer camp with an iron fist. Well, there is something a little bit unnerving about Black's monotone voice.
Can we call you Uncle Blackie?
No. Last question.
I can't really say that he's particularly scary. If anything, his counselor minions do all of the heavy lifting when it comes to intimidating these kids into staying in line, with each teenage boy being granted total freedom as bullies, while Black irresponsibly allows them to ignore safety for every activity.
Are you sure that's safe? Well, it ain't getting any safer.
That said, the dystopia of Camp Krusty speaks volumes for Black's despicable villainy, and the very lengths that he will go to crush his summer camp slaves, like feeding them only imitation gruel, or tiring them out with physically overexhausting hikes.
Back in line, maggot!
However, after all of Black's sleazy cheapskating and efforts to psychologically crack these kids, it's actually his very own hubris that defeats him, because this fool completely underestimated the passion of Krusty fans.
We want Crunchy! I thought you said you broke their spirits.
We did!
You broke nothing.
Nelson Muntz. In the early Simpsons episode, Bart the General, Nelson is at his peak power as a bully, and Bart Simpson is his newest daily victim. Sure, Nelson's role in this episode was a very common trope in 90s cartoons.
I'll get you after school, man.
However, this doesn't mean that he's an inherently bad antagonist. I don't expect every fictional bully to be complex, because, more often than not, bullies are simply awful people who just like being cruel. And nothing deeper than that. Heck, this episode goes the extra mile to make Muntz into a legit intimidating force for this school. Like, Nelson is so imposing to other kids that Bart ends up having 2 nightmares about him in the same episode. Plus, this bully is so used to making his victims' blood splatter that he mistakes his own nosebleed for Bart's blood.
You're bleeding!
Nah, happens all the time. Somebody else's blood splatters on me.
What's more is that it takes almost nearly every kid at Springfield Elementary to band together in a military fashion just to strike any sense of fear into Nelson. Yeah, our dreaded villain is literally defeated through a water balloon fight, but that just goes to show how, behind all of Nelson's imagined mythos as a school menace, he's just a cowardly child. By the episode's end, Nelson does sign a deal to stop bullying, but this never actually became canon. Of course, Nelson would later develop into a richer character with a far more versatile purpose in the show, a dry, insult-quipping class jerk who brings an edge to Bart's group dynamic and frequently surprises us with a hidden soft side that can hilariously contradict his fierce bully image. The Itchy and Scratchy robots. When the Simpsons go to Itchy and Scratchy Land together, they get to enjoy the rides or cause rule-breaking mischief. But the theme park's animatronics also end up malfunctioning. These bots are first introduced as fun parade novelties, and the manager even assures us that they've been programmed with safety measures. The Simpsons also find it easy to keep their guards down, because this park has desensitized them to violence and the shadier side of attraction resorts.
Wanna get a snow cone? Okay.
However, there's no denying how creepy these machines already come off from the get-go. From the burning red eyes, to their uncanny lack of fur, to the fact that each one wields a dangerous weapon. Then, once the power goes out, these theme park terminators double in terror, with the nighttime darkness and 80s horror music adding to their menace.
Oh my, it looks like we're doomed.
Not to mention, the Simpsons have screwed over their survival chances after spending their visit being a nuisance to the staff.
You're the guys who didn't like our capering. When you get to hell, tell them Itchy sent you.
Despite all of the build-up though, the solution is a pretty simple flash photography trigger, so these villains don't last that long as threats, or even put up much of a fight against their human prey.
Die, bad robots! Die!
Shelby? After Bart and his friends retaliate against a Shelbyville bully with lemons, Shelby gets revenge on Springfield by stealing their beloved lemon tree, so Bart and co go on a mission to rescue their precious historical landmark. Okay, so Shelby isn't a particularly intimidating bully when compared to the thuggish Nelson, but he still showcases some notable qualities as a Shelbyville sneak. For example, the fact that he's Bart's doppelganger means that he shares Bart's talents too. So, Bart ends up facing an equally matched foe, thus making for a worthy challenge. Plus, remember that Bart and his friends are now in Shelby's home domain, so as soon as the Springfield kids start their mission, there's already a sense of tension and unease, and Bart has to adapt to being in enemy territory.
I wish there was a Springfield kid here right now. I'd fill his mouth with stink bugs.
No, not in my mouth.
Shelby should also be praised for fully utilizing his dad's car impound lot as a villainous resource. From using his father's rigging truck to lift a whole tree, to imprisoning said stolen landmark with maximum security advantages. Oh, and turning the lemon tree into a free lemonade dispenser for himself in a town where lemons are not an available luxury is an extra added bonus level of spite. Luckily, in a rare Springfield smart move, the town strategically relies on the classic Trojan horse trick to retrieve their landmark, all while the thieving, sleazy Shelbyvillians are stuck drinking icky turnip juice. Jessica Lovejoy. Tim Lovejoy's daughter has a reputation as the perfect reverence child, but she's actually a criminal in the making who ends up becoming Bart's manipulative girlfriend. Jessica is very conscious of the fact that boys like her, and she uses this popularity to hold power over innocent smitten lads, as she relies on insincere affection to convince her gullible victims into following her lead.
I'll let you hold my hand.
Now, yes, Bart is quite the troublemaker himself, but even he has his own limits as a prankster. While Bart is happy to remain as a petty thug, Jessica tries to drag him down to her level, all while feeling no sympathy for his physical injuries or eventual framing as a thief.
Oh, don't you see? It's because I care for you that I can't come forward.
That doesn't make any sense.
Alright, then I just don't feel like it, okay?
Of course, Jessica is still just a kid, so there are reasons why she's acting out like this, besides being under the heavy pressure of living up to her perfect good girl reputation. She's also the daughter of a busy preaching reverend who spends most of his home time with his train set, so it makes sense that she's on a rebellious streak and wants to commit high crimes. She's desperate to have a sense of childhood freedom and the attention of a neglectful father.
I did it. It's your classic cry for attention.
However, this only explains Jessica's actions. It doesn't magically redeem her, because even after she's exposed, she shows zero remorse and continues to use others.
Would you finish scrubbing these steps for me?
Will I?
Heck, a part of me even suspects that these were actually crocodile tears. This kid is going to need some serious therapy, or she's bound to go down the wrong path in the future. Malloy. Once a cat burglar strikes Springfield, Homer forms a vigilante group to find the culprit, but the actual criminal is really a charming old man called Malloy. The great thing about Malloy is how he essentially challenges age's assumptions. During the burglar hunt, the middle-aged characters mock their elder peers as useless, yet it's this younger generation of neighborhood watchers who act the most inept and easily distracted.
Okay, we've got the secret vigilante handshake. Now we need code names.
All while they're being fooled by a grey-haired villain with impressive skills and talents, who only lets a fellow senior catch him.
So you see, old people aren't so useless after all. Malloy's old and he outsmarted the lot of you.
Malloy himself is also a very compelling character, because he walks a fine line between being mysteriously deceptive, yet also endearingly quaint.
And although I have stolen your material goods, let me assure you that your dear town has stolen my heart.
Malloy doesn't seem to enjoy the monetary side of stealing things, but instead the very thrill of being a wanted criminal who can blend into an ignored generation in a society run by immature idiots, as he mockingly pits his sophisticated experience against Homer's childlike stupidity.
Marge?
No, Homer, I'm not your wife. Although, I do enjoy her pearls.
What I love about Malloy's final chess move is how we don't know what angle he's going for, because there's two opposing sides to him, so we're left wondering if he's really leading Springfield to free treasure, or once again pulling the wool over everyone's eyes.
Rightfully sorry, but there is no hidden treasure. I have already used this time to escape from your jail.
Lyle Lanley. After Springfield inherits a mass budget, Marge proposes that they spend it on fixing Main Street, but then charismatic con man Lyle Lanley randomly bursts in to pitch a monorail? What makes Lyle so iconic and great is his scene-stealing level of vaudevillian charisma. He's a snake oil salesman with a dash of carnival barker, who relies on his natural showmanship and deflective lying skills to worm his way, all through flattering words or snappy on-the-spot lyrics.
Were you sent here by the devil?
No, good sir, I'm on the level.
Sure, the idea of a monorail isn't bad, but Lyle's budget cutbacks and disregard for quality control are. This villain doesn't give a flying hoot about the monorail in action, and he's sly enough to quickly flee the crime scene before tragedy strikes.
Aren't you gonna ride the monorail?
Little lady, I'd love to, but I have to catch a plane.
But the ride only takes a minute.
Yeah, well, my plane leaves in less than 1.
The episode brilliantly foreshadows the impending disaster ahead too, all by letting us not only see Lyle's cultural and environmental damage to other towns, but we also witness red flags in the conductor's cabin too.
Homer, there's a family of possums in here.
I call the big one Bitey.
Now yes, the inevitable disaster does happen, but it's an excitingly tense rescue mission that pushes Homer to be intuitively creative as a hero.
Dad?
Oh, and don't worry folks, Lyle himself does not get away with his life-endangering scam.
There he is, seat 3F.
Cesare and Ugolino. After Bart joins a foreign exchange program, he ends up under the guardianship of this creepy uncle and nephew villain duo. Season 1 of The Simpsons may be divisive, but these fiends have stuck with every fan because their disgusting evil is so unforgettable. I mean, the A-plot is basically Bart living at a rundown chateau, where he's essentially a child slave who is being forced to hand-make wine all day and then serve as a guinea pig for said shady alcohol at night.
Yeah, but it's got antifreeze in there.
Drink it!
Heck, when these criminals don't want to do any work themselves, they will cruelly use this already overworked and underfed kid to take their place. What's worse is that these villains feel completely entitled as child abusers, just because they gave him basic necessities.
Ungrateful swine! We give you food, we give you shelter, and this is how you repay us!
These villains' biggest mistake, though, was choosing to talk in French around the impressionable Bart, because this habit is what gives the boy a fighting chance as a prisoner.
Aidez-moi! C'est de tes nous faut travailler jour et nuit. Ils ne nous donnent pas à manger. Ils nous font dormir par terre.
These vicious vignons might not be as witty as other classic Simpsons villains, but they still leave a lasting bitter taste as heartless monsters. So we're halfway through this video. Do you want to see my videos early before they go up on YouTube? Then click the join button below and become an advanced member today. Miss Bots. When Homer and Marge have a romantic night out, an agency sends them a babysitter called Miss Bots. But this caregiver is actually a wanted bandit. I've always loved the brilliant design for Bots, with an elongated frame and quirky features, a captivating look that's made even springier and slimier by a surprisingly fluid animation. This design makes her into one frightening criminal while she slinks around the Simpsons home like a predatory reptile.
Time to brush your teeth, wash your face, and say your prayers.
I also like how this episode teases her eventual twist. When we first meet her, she acts defensive of her suspicious cases, but also tries to be as passive as possible to avoid suspicion. Oh, and it's fun how a crime show on TV gradually builds up its creepy case, only to shockingly reveal the worst truth possible for these vulnerable kids.
Remember, she may be using a clever alias, and should be considered armed and dangerous.
As a villain, Bots has been pulling the stunt across many states, so she's mastered her crime, and she disturbingly acts out each beat or precaution like it's just another day for her.
Here, while I finish up, you guys can watch the rest of your favorite video cassette.
Muntz might sneer at the Simpsons' belongings, but she still cleverly utilizes her sizable carriers to gather as much as she can before she has to bail as babysitter. Unfortunately for this crooked sitter, she's not taking care of normal children, but rather kids who are smart and street savvy enough to outwit a wanted woman.
Hello, vigilant viewer. How may we help you?
We caught her! We caught the babysitter Bennett! She's tied up at our house right now!
Although, thanks to Marge and Homer's naivete, Bart ends up freely moving on to her next victims, thus leaving viewers with one of the darkest endings to a Simpsons episode to date. Cecil Terwilliger, this younger brother of Sideshow Bob, has freed his sibling from prison and promises him a job at the construction of a new Springfield dam. However, it turns out that said dam is actually part of an embezzlement scam. While you could easily sum up Cecil as a carbon copy of Sideshow Bob, I would say that's a surface level analysis of him. Yes, the similarities are glaring, but Cecil is far more grounded and efficient compared to his maniacal sibling, making for an entertainingly passive-aggressive relationship between the two.
After all, it led me to my true calling.
Cecil, no civilization in history has ever considered chief hydrological engineer a calling.
This difference pays off as well, because Cecil's decision to use his older brother's terrible reputation as a scapegoat is not only a solid way to get audiences to question Bob's redemption, but also a cleverly shrewd alibi for Cecil, who has a clean and crisp record compared to his multiple convicted brother. Credit where it's due too. Once Cecil blows up this dam, he'll be wiping out his evidence and witnesses at the same time. I do also buy the twist that Cecil was the real villain all along, because it is fishy how he's decided to reconcile with Bob after 10 whole years. And there's certainly a strong motive for a possible double cross.
Oh, come now. You wanted to be Krusty's sidekick since you were 5.
But Cecil's job is mundane enough to stop him from being too suspect. I do also appreciate that Cecil's ego isn't the same as his brother's, because it means that the Simpsons can't simply pander to his pride, making for a change of pace and higher stakes.
By throwing me off a dam? Isn't that a little crude for a genius like you?
Ooh, I suppose it is. If anyone asks, I'll lie.
However, I do have my complaints for him in his one Golden Age episode. For example, Cecil isn't an antagonistic threat until the episode's very finale, and he doesn't get to shine as much as his over-theatrical brother under this short time. On top of this, we've already had plenty of other Simpsons villains with the exact same type of scheme as Cecil's. So the eventual crime reveal feels like deja vu, and it's only mildly spiced up by the brotherly revenge angle.
This is all because I got to be Krusty's sidekick instead of you, isn't it?
Off the record, yes. But officially, I did it for the money.
That said, the chase to stop Springfield from being flooded is still very exciting, and it will always be funny to me how things pan out, despite Bob's sincere efforts to change this dime.
I'm older. I get the top bunk.
Rex Banner? When Springfield brings back the Prohibition, a serious Treasury officer called Rex Banner takes over as the chief of police to strictly uphold this 200-year-old law. Some may argue that this gumshoe is simply just doing his job, but that couldn't be more wrong. Firstly, he is more recklessly authoritative than professionally noble.
Rex Banner tore into the bootleggers like a chippy tearing into a lobster.
I mean, he's not even good at his job, because he frequently ignores clues that are right in his face, and his anxious desperation can lead to false arrests.
Well, if you're talking about root beer, I plead guilty as charred-diddly-arged.
He's not the Baron, but he sounds drunk. Take him in.
Heck, Banner is so prideful and insecure as a police chief that he even resorts to creating a narrative where his wanted nemesis, the Bear Baron, was all just a myth.
I suspect he was just an invention of the media. The idea that someone like that could operate under my very nose is laughable.
Secondly, Rex isn't even upholding the Prohibition for just reasons, because he seems apathetic to general substance abuse crime in Springfield.
Okay, you win. From now on, we'll stick to smuggling heroin.
See that you do!
That's what I love about Rex, though. He's a brilliant caricature of lawful evilness that sharply mocks how basing your entire scruples on legal order does not inherently make you a good person.
It's not up to us to choose which laws we want to obey. If it were, I'd kill everyone who looked at me cockeyed.
The cherry on top is how well the episode leans into Rex's film noir detective persona for comedy. It's just so funny seeing this bow-faced and old-fashioned man culturally clashing against confused Springfieldians.
I'm gonna say it plain and simple. Where'd you pinch the hooch? Is some blind tiger jerking suds on the side?
Yes?
Oh, and I love how his villain defeat is highly deserving, yet amazingly ridiculous at the same time.
Send him back to Mama, boy.
Herman. This military antique store owner is a very shady salesman who often commits seedy crimes under the noses of Springfield. Even in his first episode, in which he acts as a military advisor to Bart's army, he shows a rather unhinged side that seems to be begging to come out.
Is it okay if they say happy birthday on the side?
Well, I'd rather they say death from above, but I guess we're stuck.
Yes, Herman gives off creepy vibes, so you may be thinking that it's hard for him to deceive others. However, Herman does have a knack for hiding under the radar, despite his obvious shadiness. From having a secret password for a shadowy store, to cunningly running a scheme in the least suspicious place possible.
And what better place to make the buy than in a cop's garage where no one would suspect a thing?
Speaking of dirty deeds, Herman's illegal dealings have no moral barrier, and he's willing to make trades with the very bottom of Springfield's barrel. Heck, one of his crime's clients are never shown, and their identities are left to our worst imaginations. Although, it is easy to make an unsettling guess when said tale is a Pulp Fiction parody. Now yes, Herman is one of Springfield's very rare disabled characters, but the show doesn't portray this villain's handicap as a joke. Like, not only does Herman successfully overpower the police chief and Springfield's toughest criminal, but he's also very nimble and athletic in his showdown against Marge. If I'm totally honest, I think that Herman is one of the more underappreciated Simpsons Golden Age baddies, and it's a shame that his villain legacy has been overshadowed. Fat Tony. This Italian-American mobster is the boss of the Springfield Mafia. He's both immensely intimidating as an underworld criminal, yet also classically charming at the same time. Everyone in the city fears him greatly, but you can't deny that the guy is drowning in charisma and knows how to play it cool.
You wouldn't happen to know anything about a cigarette truck that got hijacked on Route 401?
What's a truck?
Don't play dumb with me.
Much like Herman, Tony is very versatile about his crime endeavors, but the difference is that he's backed up by a mafioso family who can help expand his schemes into citywide projects. It's almost like Fat Tony is a parasite spreading a poisonous plague across Springfield. Although, his criminal work can be intimately one-on-one too, as he sharply bullseyes someone desperate or needy, only to then stalk, torment, or even violently threaten them into his bidding.
You have 24 hours to give us our money.
Oh, and this mobster isn't all bark, because when push comes to shove, he will raise his knuckle dusters for a street fight. Plus, murder is not off the table for him.
We didn't see nothing if you didn't see nothing.
What I also love is that Fat Tony can have a soft spot for his victims too, thus leading to compellingly complicated mobster and target relationships. Whether we're talking about his uncle-like favorability for Bart, who gets tangled up in Tony's gang for one episode.
Hey, I like this kid. I can't believe we were gonna shoot him.
Or the fact that, despite his menacing and serious image, he's actually a huge fan of Krusty the Clown.
But we're only letting the bet ride because you crack us so consistently. Up.
What's also interesting is that even though Fat Tony is a head honcho who has gained a lot of shadowy power from the dark belly of Springfield, he's not at the top of the underworld hierarchy, so we do get to see some episodes where he has to grovel to other gangsters or let a higher ranking mafia boss take the lead in a crime, which can make for a fun change of power dynamic and give us an eye into Tony's vulnerable side.
Come on, boys. The kiss of death. That's all I need.
That's the thing. Tony might be a tough brute, but he's not cold and empty. As ruthless as this mobster tries to be, he still has sensitive emotions that can be reached, which can make for very funny irony.
You mean the mob only did me a favor to get something in return? Oh, Fat Tony!
Tony may be the most stereotypical villain on this list, but he's still a legend of sitcom villainy who brings a realistic sense of danger to the Simpsons' wacky slice of life adventures. Mr. Burns, the wealthy owner of Springfield's nuclear plant, is the most powerful man in the city, and he loves to abuse this fact for his own whim. Now, yes, Mr. Burns is phenomenally old, but his ancient age is also a big part of his villainy. Sure, there's certainly lots of hilarious gags to come from his decrepit body's fragility, niche references to the Depression, or lack of any logical consistency.
Mattingly!
I thought I told you to trim those sideburns! Go home! You're off the team for good!
However, his fading mind can also be a disturbing aspect of him, because there's an unsettling side to his senility, and it's kinda horrifying that a man this mentally withered is allowed any power at all.
We'll take the spruce moose! Hop in!
But, sir...
I said hop in.
The man clearly belongs in an old folks home or maybe even an asylum, yet he's been granted 100% resources as a villain, and his decaying brain can create the most backcrab bonkers schemes ever.
Take one last look at the sun, Springfield.
Monty's immense riches not only give him the freedom to fund these wild ideas, but this same money helps him to be invincible to consequences, as he can bribe his way out of holes, and he sees crime penalties as chump change. On top of these things, he can also afford a team of high-class lawyers who can expertly help him to win any case that's thrown at him.
This court rules in favor of Montgomery Burns.
Due to being Homer's boss, he has particular leverage over the Simpsons themselves, because their entire livelihood depends on Homer's employment, and Burns is willing to often take advantage of this, which can lead to very awkward and tense plots, which require Homer to tread eggshells or humor Monty just to keep his family secure.
Mr. Burns. Mr. Burns.
Shut up and wreck something!
However, the show also deconstructs the billionaire mythos by stripping down the old man's desperate need to overcompensate and exposing how fragile he really is behind all of his luxury.
Beneath Mr. Burns's fearsome head with its cruel lips, spiteful tongue, and evil brain, there was a frail, withered body.
No matter how much Monty tries to pay for his legacy, fame, or happiness, he will always just be a nepo baby who was adopted into a wealthy family that raised him to be someone who normalizes entitled evil.
You're still evil, and when you're trying to be good, you're even more evil.
I don't understand.
Sideshow Bob. This children's entertainer turned deranged criminal frequently stalks or schemes against the Simpsons family, but he always finds himself being foiled by Bart. Bob is a naturally charming gentleman who talks with a lot of class and sophistication, and he will often use this magnetism to seduce or manipulate any obstacles.
Doesn't it say die, Bart, die?
No, that's German for the Bart.
At the same time though, Bob also has many screws loose, and his motives are frequently rooted in very deranged priorities or principles. Most notably, he has quite the revenge complex, especially when it comes to Bart. So many of his villain plots will either target Bart, a Simpsons relative, or Bart's very own town of Springfield itself. Sideshow Bob's personal gripe can resurrect poor Bart's trauma every time that Robert guests on the show.
This is dedicated to Bart Simpson with a message, I am coming to kill you slowly and painfully.
Despite Bob's blatant lunacy though, he is still a criminal with a high IQ, who can design or plan impressively intricate schemes that rely on many steps or specific details to work. This remarkable intellect also makes him very snobby too though, and his snooty standards have resulted in a compulsive hatred towards junk television, an obsession that's consumed him so much that even TV itself can sometimes be the very victim of his maniacal villainy. From stealing a nuclear bomb to end all television broadcasting, to hijacking Krusty's show in a bid to make kids' entertainment less insulting.
A volley of musketry flamed, thundered, roared. A profound silence followed.
That's the thing, Bob is actually an amazing performer, and he could have made it big as a theatre star. Instead, he chooses to use his exceptional performing skills for evil.
But Colonel, I'm under strict orders.
Sweet Enola Gay, son! Get moving or I'll tear you up like a Kleenex at a snot party.
Sir, right away, sir!
Although, these very talents of his are also his exposable Achilles heel, as Bob himself is fully aware of his genius intelligence and masterful stage skills, and it's always fun to see how the Simpsons kids will cunningly exploit this narcissism each time.
You don't have the intelligence to rig an election by yourself, do you? You were just Barlow's lackey. You were Ronnie to his Nancy, Sonny to his Cher, Bingo to his rest of the Beatles.
Enough!
When it comes to animated sitcom baddies, Sideshow Bob has set the bar for the very best of the best. He's a psychologically complex homicidal monster with a giant ego that's very entertaining to humiliate. Feel free to watch my other villain videos, folks. Cheerio!